This lick is all about one of the coolest things I think about Guthrie Govan's playing, in that he's not just generally playing typical pentatonic or 3-note string or whatever you want to kind of call it, kind of lines. He has this really fluid chromatic thing going on to his playing, which is more akin to stuff like bebop, where you're pretty much filling in the spaces between scale tones and chord tones and arpeggios and things like that. So this lick is really a pentatonic minor lick, and what we're doing is we've got a descending part and an ascending part. So the descending part is pretty much the foundation to it is just coming down a simple A pentatonic minor scale. So I'm starting at the 10th fret in the B string. So I'm doing 10-8 in the B string, 9-7 on the G, 7-5 in the G, you know, and then I've got 7-5 in the D and the A strings, and 3 in that A string, the minor third, and the root note. Yeah, so that's what we're doing, but what we're doing between each of these scale tones is filling in the gaps, or kind of putting the meat in the sandwich, if you will. So from here, instead of doing 8, 10, I've got 8, 9, 10 are my notes. On between 7 and 9, I got 7, 8, 9. Yeah, between 5 and 7, I got 5, 6, 7. 5, 6, 7 in the D, 5, 6, 7 in the A. Yeah, and then just get to the end. Okay. So what you get is, even if you play it just descending like that, you have this really cool kind of flowing momentum to it. And Guthrie Govan will do this quite a lot. I mean, if you think of your blues scale in a sense, you've already got that kind of little glue note between the 4th and the 5th. You got a little flat 5. And you have another typical one between the minor 3rd and the 4th, so you've got like your major 3rd in there. So it gives bluesy stuff, it's kind of bluesy kind of sound. Basically going to start with the little precursor notes of 8, 9 on the B string. That's going to lead into the beat, which is 10 on that A string there, root note. And then what I do there is I basically go 8, 9, then I do 10, 9, 8 on the B, and then 9, 8, 7 on the G string there. Okay, then I go down to the 5th fret here, so you're kind of moving down just a tone there. Then I do my 6, 7, 6, 5, 7, 6, 5. And that's the kind of phrasing that you want for it. Okay. Then from here, so I've just ended up at 5 in the D string. I now have my 6, 7, 6, 5, 7, 6, 5 on the D and the A strings. Then I move down to the 3rd fret, do a little bluesy bend there, just with the 1st finger. Then I end it with the root note. So the rhythm's kind of interesting, so think more of the phrasing of it rather than trying to think of the specific rhythm here. So the kind of phrasing, that's kind of what you kind of want to feel for the first bit. And I'm also obviously kind of alternate picking this. Because of my kind of hooky picking style, I'm starting with an upstroke. You might find it easier starting with a downstroke if you're more used to that. So that's kind of full tempo, that first little phrase. And then you kind of lead into the next bit. But the accenting, so you're actually aiming for that 7 on the D string there to do the next phrase. Does that make sense? So slowly it kind of goes. Yeah? So from here we now have an ascending idea. Now what we're doing here pretty much is we're going up A pentatonic minor again. So if I'm thinking kind of scale tones, I'm at the 3rd fret A string. Then I've got my 5th fret. Yeah. Then I've got my 7th fret there, it's your 5th. Then I add in this 6th or 13th in terms of chord tone. Just to give it an old kind of school swing blues kind of thing going on. And then we ascend pretty much, once we've done that, we ascend up a kind of blues scale. And I'll talk about the bend at the end. But as before, what I'm doing here is I'm putting in the kind of glue notes between these kind of scale tones. So your first little bit actually goes 3, 4, 5. And rhythmically here you want to think of little groups of 3 notes. So that's 1, 2, 3 is your first one. And notice I'm playing all this with the first finger. So if you're not used to this, and this chromatic way of playing in general, you can work on little exercises to synchronize your left and right hand, because what you're really doing is you're pretty much sliding up with this finger, but you're picking the string in time. Guthrie Govan's a master at that. I mean, you'll see him move all over the place rhythmically with that. So you can do exercises where you can chromatically play all that sort of stuff, but that's okay, it can get a bit boring. Playing licks like this is the better way of doing it. So we do 3, 4, 5 with the first finger. Then I'm going to do 6, 7 with the second and third finger. And the third note is actually 5 in the D string there. So that's my first 6 notes. Okay. Already you can hear it as this kind of bluesy kind of momentum to it. Next little bit goes 7, 8, 9, but I play all that with the third finger. Yeah. And that just gets us in position, rather than maybe trying to play all that with the first finger. So it's this idea of you develop the awareness to kind of use the right finger to get you into kind of positions. So that's what we've got so far. And the last 3 notes are that there. So I'm playing 7, 10 in the D string, which is a root and minor third. But I've got that kind of bluesy 13th going on there. Okay, so that's our kind of 12 notes. Then I play up pretty much an A, kind of pentatonic minor with a flat 5th. Now I think when I play it at tempo I might do like a little hammer on there. Again, because I'm a hooky picking, I'm probably doing something so I can get into position for an upstroke or something. But you know, you can alternate pick it all or work on whatever feels comfortable. When I get to the end, of course, you know, and by the way, that blues scale is 7, 10 in the D, and it's 7, 8, 9 in the G string, and 8, 10 in the B. Then I've got a 1.5 step bend at the end. And Guthrie's a big fan of big bends, so I'll just kind of end it, the bend up to a minor third. So this note here, you got 1.5 step bends, okay? So if you're not used to that, and if you're using 10s or high gauge string or whatever, make sure you support that bend with the other fingers, okay? So altogether that second part sounds like this. Okay, so this lick is pretty much 2 parts. You've got the descending part and the ascending part, but it's all about filling in these gaps. So try and, if you like that kind of sound, it's one of the things I love about Guthrie Govan's playing. His note choice is just out of this world, and these blazing runs that he puts in sometimes, rhythmically they're just so on point. His technique and everything's so good, but it has this real kind of fiery kind of momentum to it. So take any scales that you have and throw in those notes in between the scale tones and chord tones with your arpeggios and things. In true bebop fashion, you would kind of make those scale tones and chord tones land on the beat or the half beat. But in the kind of heat of the moment, and particularly some of these runs that Guthrie blazes through, it's more the kind of musical effect of it that you can want with this chromaticism. So have a go with it, have fun with it. It's a great lick, works in a lot of kind of alternate picking technique and traversing the fingerboard, so it's really good for your playing. In this lick we're going to use a little bit of hybrid picking and kind of a 2-octave shape that I've seen Guthrie Govan use quite a few times. So what we're actually doing, if I take the basic thing we're doing, we're playing an octave shape but across 2 octaves. Sounds cool if you sweep it like that as well. So if I was playing like an E here, I've got like 7th fret that A string with the first finger, I stretch to 9th fret in the G, playing that octave, and then I've got the 2nd octave, 12th fret that high E string with the 4th finger. But to play that, as I said, you could sweep it, but Guthrie Govan uses some hybrid picking. Now, when I'm picking it, I I tend to use the pick and the A string, middle finger in the G, and then my little finger on that high E string. You might find you want to use the third finger, but I just find a little bit of a stretch, so I use my fourth finger. So doing something like that is a good way to get used to it, because there's a little bit of a stretch with the left hand here, but you just want to be able to, yeah, just do that with kind of the hybrid picking, get it warmed up to it. So what we're going to be doing here pretty much is playing this 2-octave shape, and positionally I'm going to do it at the 7th fret, up to the 10th fret, up to the 12th fret, back to the 10, 14th fret, 12th fret, 10th fret. Okay, so my first finger is my kind of anchor point, my point of orientation for that. So you need to keep these octave shapes fixed so you don't hit kind of any notes in between. But the kind of sequence that we're playing is we kind of play the A, G and high E string, and then we slide up a kind of, you know, to the next note. So we start off by doing 7, 9, 12 and I slide up to the 14 there. Just a little tone slide. Then I'm going to do my 10, 12, 15 up to the 17 like that. Then I've got my 12, 14, 17 back to the 15, okay? Then I've got my 12, so my 10, 12, 15 sliding up to the 19. Then I got 14, 16, 19 back to that 17 and 12, 14, 17 back to the 15, and then 10, 12, 15 back to the 12 there. And I did something like that when I was playing it, but that's, you know, that's unimportant, okay? Have fun with that, it's really cool. I've seen Guthrie Govan do it quite a few times. It's just a little bit of an interesting thing to do with your octave rather than just doing like 1 octave, moving about, kind of Wes style or whatever. And with the hybrid picking as well, it allows you to do different things with these kind of wide intervallic jumps that you may not be able to, you know, if you're just using the pick. Okay, so have fun with it. This lick's based on something I first heard on the track Eric from Erotic Cakes. And I remember when I first got the album and I was listening through it, obviously I'd heard a couple of things before from like a Concord sampler, but I heard this section in Eric and I'd initially, much like a lot of things that Matthias Eklund or Ron Thallen things do, kind of, you hear it and you go, how on earth are they playing that? And I remember grabbing the guitar and we're eventually working out what was going on. What he's basically doing here is, it's this idea of kind of playing like a little, like kind of mordant or control idea before sliding into a note. So it's this kind of real cool kind of ornamentation to the note. I guess it's almost something Celtic-like. You might hear kind of pipes or something do. So what you're doing, basically the general technique of this, if I was going to play 10 on this E string here, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tap at the 15th fret, pull off to the 8, hammer to 10, pull off to the 8, and then slide like that. Yeah, so when you speed it up you get that kind of effect. So it's really, really cool. It basically allows you to add this kind of interest as playing single notes. So basically what we're doing here is, if I look at the notes that we're going to be targeting, pretty much we're doing 10, 8, 10, 12, 10, 8, 10 to begin with. Yeah. Kind of that. Then we do, so 8, so 10, 8, 10, 12, 10, 8, 5, like that, okay? But each of these notes are preceded with this little tap at the 15th fret and the little kind of twiddle, which is the technical term I'm calling it. So we have this. That's your first bit, okay? So you have to be relaxed enough to play that sort of bunch of notes in that short space of time. Yeah. Then we have, so from here there's a little bit of an awkward jump, you have to go back. Like that. Okay. So again. Yeah, and then I go, so I have to jump back and do the, you know, pull off here. But that's basically what's going on with this lick. So just work slowly to get that little hammer pull off and slide synchronized correctly. Okay. This idea is all about Guthrie Govan's string bending technique, which is phenomenal. His control of the strings and intonation is pretty crazy, really, when you think about it. So this was kind of inspired by maybe something like the solo off Regret No. 9 that he did with Stephen Wilson, the Hand Cannot Raise album. It's an awesome guitar solo. And what I'm doing here is I'm starting off with this, doing a bend in the D string. Now most people, when they're doing string bends, you know, we spend a lot of our times doing string bends on the high E string, the B string, maybe the G string. Very rare do we do it on the kind of wound strings, particularly big steps. So this sort of idea, depending on your gauge of strings, can be pretty hard on the fingers. But what I'm going to do here is I'm sliding up basically kind of the 5th fret in the D string here. Then I'm going to do a slow whole step bend from 7 to 9. Now because I'm on the wound string here, it kind of makes sense to kind of pull down with the bend. I mean, generally our hands, the muscles on the arm are easier gripping stuff than they are kind of pushing up. So it adds a little bit more control, but I'm also supporting it again with the 2nd and 1st finger here. Then when I get to the kind of pitch, I give it a good bit of vibrato there, just to kind of make the notes sing. And that slide, it's kind of a hammer on from 5 to 7. Then I do the same again. I'm doing 7 to 9 now, so I slide up to 7, hammer on to 9, and I do a little half step bend. Again, when I get to pitch, I'm going to do a lot of vibrato. Yeah. Next section, I've kind of got a little arpeggiated flourish here. So what I'm actually going to do is I do this quick little arpeggio where I do 7, 9, 10 on the D string, all legato, and I think I do 1st, 2nd, 3rd finger there. And then I'm going to do, once I get to that 10, I do 9, 8 on the G and B strings. So I'm kind of doing like it's like an A minor 7 arpeggio, maybe with a 9th in there. But it's basically a fancy way of getting to this root note, this 10 on the B string here. So basically I use a little bit of economy picking for that. So I'm kind of doing downstroke, down, down, hammer. And once I get to that 10, I'm going to slide up to the 15th fret, but I do a bend when I get to the end of it. And that's a big part of a lot of kind of Guthrie Govan's bending technique, is you'll slide into notes, you know. It gives it this kind of slippery feel, which is a big part of his playing, hence wonderful slippery thing. So when you get up to that, you got a whole step bend there. Okay, vibrato again. And then you have this. So I'm going to do a whole step bend at the 17th fret up and down. Then I go back to the 15th fret, 1st finger, lots of vibrato. Okay, so the whole point of this is to give this really emotive kind of feel with your string bends, rather than just kind of going bending and giving it a bit of rock vibrato. See if you can craft the bends because they're more vocal like. You know, that sort of vibe to it. Vibrato helps with that, obviously, kind of emulates the singing voice, but you have to have this bending control to kind of bend up to pitch. So it's right there, and then you add just a little bit of kind of sweet vibrato. So have fun with that. Watch out for, you know, if you're not used to big bends or you get heavier gauge strings, just take it nice and easy. Make sure you don't break anything. So this like ups the ante a little bit of tapping madness. So what I'm going to start with, I've got a string mute here from Guthrie, and they are handy basically just to control the strings, particularly if you're playing live with this sort of, you know, tapping technique. Generally though, I mean, when you're working on this, it's good to do it with that mute just to kind of work on your natural dampening technique. So I'll just leave that off just now, but in the performance video I had it on there just for the kind of recording. So what I'm actually going to be doing here is something that Guthrie Govan isn't the only player that does this, and there's lots of players that do it, but being able to, using 3 note per string kind of arpeggios or pentatonic scales with tapping notes, gives you a lot of notes for generally very little effort, which is always great on the guitar. So what I'm outlining here, up at the kind of 12th fret, I'm kind of outlining an A pentatonic minor scale. The left hand's going to be playing this shape. It's 12, 15, 17 on the A string. Then I'm doing 12, 14, 17 on the G string. And then 12, 15, 17 again on the high E string. You can see why this is great, because it's almost the same shape on every string. Okay. What I'm tapping is a tone above where the pinky lands on the A, on the G, and the G strings as well. So I'm tapping 19th fret there, 19th fret on the G string, and then 20th fret on the high E string. Okay, so that's generally my pattern or my notes. Okay, but this is something that Guthrie Govan himself mentioned in the masterclass a long time ago, where you could rattle up and down that, nice even timing, up and down, sound great. But what Guthrie Govan likes to do is just put a little bit of rhythmical variety in there. So you hear this in like the tapping like in fives, you know, and the kind of big flourish in fives. So there's little points where he pauses, and that's what we've kind of done here. So we start off as we pause there to begin with. So I'm doing my 12, 15, 17, 19, 12, 14, 17, 19, and I pause in that tap. And then when I do that pause, once I pause a little bit, pull off, 17, 14, 12, come all the way up again, and then up to 12, 15, 17, 20, and I pause at that tap note there. So slowly that kind of goes. Yeah, and once I've done the pause at the 20, I kind of roll off and then hammer on 15, 17 again. So I kind of do my 20, 17, 15, 12, 15, 17. Yeah, and that's kind of your first part of it. So that's all based around this idea of tapping like particular arpeggios or your pentatonic scale. The second part of the tapping lick delves into something that Guthrie Govan does in sevens, which is kind of tapping like seventh arpeggios, but with kind of like fifth ideas. Now what I mean by that is this here, this shape that I'm playing here, basically I'm tapping with the right hand 19th fret in the high E string, 17th fret in the B string, and I use my third and middle fingers for that, my third and my second fingers. So it's not quite 8 finger tapping. I always like to call this 7 finger tapping, because I don't really tap with that finger. But it means you can hold your pick whilst you're doing it. So I tap those notes, 19 and 17, and then when I hammer on from nowhere, 15th fret the E, 13th fret of the B string. Now, basically what you're playing there is like a C major 7 arpeggio. You've got your root note, your 5th, sorry, your 3rd, then your 5th, then your major 7. Yeah, we're kind of superimposing in this kind of minor context, but that's what we've got. Okay, so we do that, then we jump down to the G and the B strings, and what I'm going to tap now with the right hand is 17th fret of the B with the 3rd finger, 16th fret of the G with the middle finger, and then I'm going to do 13 in the B, middle finger, and then index finger plays that G string, 12th fret. That sort of idea. Then I take down onto the D and G strings, and what I'm basically doing here is playing an octave down from where I started. So I'm going to be tapping 16, 14 on the G and D strings respectively. Again, same 3rd finger, middle finger with the right hand. Then I'm going to do 12, 10 on the G and the D strings with the 3rd finger and the index finger here. Yeah, kind of little 5th shapes, but again, I said it's a major 7 arpeggio. Okay, so that's your first bit. Yeah, and then just to break up the rhythm, I then start at this bit again. Yeah, so I do another one of those, and then I move down to the D and A strings. So what I'm going to tap is 14 in the D, 14 on the A. Now because you're tapping right above one another, you know, the notes are stacked right on top of one another, watch it, your fingers don't clash. Yeah, so I do 14, 14, and I'm going to do 10, 10 on the D and A strings. Now I use the 2nd and 1st finger here. You might want to use maybe 3rd and 2nd if you find it's twisting your hand into stack feels a little bit awkward. But I use the 2nd and 1st. And then I end it off with basically where we started down 2 octaves. So I'm going to do 14 on the A, 12 on the E, and then I'm going to do 10 on the A string with the 3rd finger, 8th fret on the E string. Then I end it off with a slide from 8 to 10. So that whole tapping sequence goes like this. Okay. And when you combine the two together, the kind of transition into that from this, so you're that 12, 15, 17 that we did. 15? What does that mean? You know, and then I'm going to tap at 19 to help the continuity of it. So there you go, it's a cool lick. Uses kind of elements, couple of elements of Guthrie Govan's tapping style with string skipping and arpeggios and scales, as well as a kind of stacked interval thing for or playing 7th arpeggios in a bit more of a broken up, interesting manner. So it's a really cool kind of idea. It sounds very melodic because of that, I think. So have fun with it and see if you can incorporate some of the ideas into your own playing.